Now, I want to tell you something that most people find genuinely uncomfortable, and I think that discomfort is actually the sign that something true and important is happening in your mind. Most people, if you ask them where the Earth came from, will give you some polite, tidy answer about the solar system forming from a rotating cloud of gas and dust, and that is technically correct. But it is also a little bit dishonest in a subtle way, because it skips the part that should make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. It skips the part that made me stop in the middle of a calculation once and just sit quietly for a while, thinking about what the numbers were actually saying. Here is the real situation. The ground beneath your feet, the calcium holding your skeleton together, the iron carrying oxygen through your bloodstream right now, none of that came from a pristine, untouched beginning. None of it was freshly manufactured for this solar system. Every single one of those atoms is ancient beyond imagination, and it arrived here not through some gentle, orderly process, but through one of the most catastrophically violent chain of events the universe has ever produced. You are not living on a new planet. You are living on the debris field of an annihilation. Let me give you an analogy, because I find that when the numbers get too enormous, a good comparison is worth 1,000 equations. Imagine a group of survivors stumbling through a dark landscape. They find a clearing, gather some rocks, and build themselves a small, quiet campfire. They sit around it, feel warm, and think to themselves, well, here is a beginning. Here is something fresh and clean in an uncertain world. Now, what they do not know, what they have absolutely no way of knowing just from looking at their little fire, is that the ground they are sitting on, the rocks they gathered, the very dirt beneath them, is all that physically remains of a colossal industrial complex, something the size of a continent, that ran at incomprehensible pressures and temperatures for millions of years before catastrophically failing and obliterating itself in a single moment of total mechanical collapse. The survivors think their campfire is the story, but the actual story is the shattered, radioactive ruin they are unknowingly camped on top of. The ground is not just ground. It is the pulverized remnant of an engine so powerful and so old that it would be essentially impossible to describe to someone who had only ever seen a campfire. That is our solar system. That is us. Our sun is the campfire. The debris field it formed from is what was left after the real engines, the ones that ran before everything, finished tearing themselves apart. Now let me be specific, because vagueness is the enemy of understanding. In the very early universe, roughly a few 100 million years after the initial expansion, the first generation of stars ignited. Cosmologists call them population 3 stars, and I want you to understand what that label is quietly trying to contain. These were not stars like our sun. Our sun is a modest, well-behaved, middle-aged object that will burn steadily for billions of years. Population 3 stars were, in the most physically literal sense, monsters. The early universe contained essentially only hydrogen and helium, no heavy elements whatsoever. When the first enormous clouds of this pure primordial gas collapsed under their own gravity, the resulting stars were likely hundreds of times more massive than our sun, in some cases possibly thousands of times more massive. And here is the brutal arithmetic of stellar physics. The more massive a star is, the hotter its core burns, and the faster it consumes its fuel. Our sun will live for about 10 billion years total. A star, 100 times more massive, lives for perhaps 3 million years. The most extreme population 3 stars may have lasted only a few 100,000 years, which, on cosmic timescales, is essentially a brief, furious flicker. But it is what happened at the end of those short lives that is the crucial physical event. When an ordinary star exhausts its fuel, it collapses relatively gently into a white dwarf or a neutron star. When a population 3 star of sufficient mass exhausted its fuel, the collapse was so rapid and so total that the resulting explosion was not an ordinary supernova. It was a hypernova, or in the most extreme cases, something theorized as a pair instability supernova, where the core became so hot that gamma rays converted their energy directly into electron-positron pairs, robbing the core of the radiation pressure holding it up, causing a total, catastrophic freefall collapse, followed by an explosion so energetic it left essentially nothing behind. The star did not just die. It annihilated itself so completely that it ejected the vast majority of its mass back into the surrounding universe at a fraction of the speed of light. The early cosmos was not a serene nursery. It was a slaughterhouse of stellar destruction operating on a scale we can barely calculate. Now, here is where the physics becomes directly personal to you, in a way that I find genuinely astonishing every time I think about it carefully. Inside the cores of those dying giants, something was happening to atoms that you need to understand in its raw mechanical detail. Fusion is the process by which lighter atomic nuclei are pressed together under enormous temperature and pressure until they merge into heavier nuclei, releasing energy in the process. Hydrogen fuses into helium. Helium fuses into carbon. Carbon fuses into neon, then oxygen, then silicon, in a cascading sequence that builds progressively heavier elements up through the periodic table. But here is the iron trap, and this is one of my favorite pieces of physics, because it is so clean and so unforgiving. When you fuse elements lighter than iron, you release energy. That energy is what makes the star shine. But when you try to fuse iron, you do not release energy. You consume it. Iron is the bottom of the energy valley. It is the point where fusion stops being profitable in energetic terms. So when a massive star builds up an iron core, the core simply stops producing the outward pressure needed to hold the star up against its own gravity. The collapse is then instantaneous on any meaningful timescale. The outer layers of the star, still containing enormous quantities of carbon, oxygen, silicon, sulfur, and all the other elements built up through millions of years of fusion, those layers then fall inward, hit the incomprehensibly dense collapsing core, and bounce outward in the most energetic explosion in the observable universe. During that bounce, during those final fractions of a second of a massive star's life, the temperatures and pressures spike to levels high enough to force the creation of elements heavier than iron, elements that cannot be made through ordinary fusion at all: gold, uranium, iodine, without which your thyroid cannot function. These atoms were forged in the final instance of dying stellar cores and then blasted outward into the galaxy. The calcium in your bones was produced in the core of a star that no longer exists. The iron carrying oxygen through your blood was forged in a stellar collapse that happened before our sun ever ignited. Every biologically critical element in your body has a specific, traceable history of violent stellar nucleosynthesis. You are not metaphorically made of stardust in some vague, poetic sense. You are physically, chemically, atom by atom, assembled from the shrapnel of prehistoric cosmic explosions. Your body is a collection of fragments from bombs that detonated billions of years ago. I find that remarkable. I genuinely do. But now let me tell you about what those ancient titans left behind in the parts we never talk about. When a sufficiently massive star collapses and explodes, the outer layers are ejected to eventually become planets and people. But the inner core, the densest remnant of all that crushing collapse, does not always become a neutron star. If the original star was massive enough, the core collapses past the neutron star stage entirely, past any known physical process that could halt the compression, into a singularity surrounded by an event horizon, a black hole. The black holes left behind by the very first generation of stars, population 3, stellar remnants, would be among the oldest discrete objects in the universe. Not the supermassive black holes at the centers of galaxies, but smaller, ancient remnants, primordial in the sense that they date from the first epoch of star formation. Some theoretical models suggest these remnants may be wandering through galactic halos and outer galactic regions, gravitationally bound to galaxies but largely invisible, carrying no memory of the brilliant, violent monsters that created them, just silently distorting space-time in the dark. The universe maintains a precise mathematical record of every act of violence it has ever committed. It does not lose mass. It does not forget angular momentum. The gravitational signatures of ancient collapses persist indefinitely. We may be surrounded, in the outer reaches of this galaxy, by the invisible gravitational ghosts of stars that burned and died before the Earth existed, before the sun existed, wandering silently through the dark like the crushed remnants of engines whose fire went out billions of years before our fire ever started. That is what the mathematics is telling us, and I think it is worth sitting with that for a moment because the instinct is to find it depressing, and I want to push back on that instinct firmly and clearly. The fact that we are assembled from the recycled cores of dead stellar titans does not diminish anything. It reveals the extraordinary efficiency and the absolute continuity of physical law across time. The universe does not waste. It cannot afford to. Every atom of hydrogen that participated in the furious burning of a population 3 star and survived the subsequent hypernova is still here, in some form, somewhere, participating in something. It may be in a gas cloud, it may be in a neutron star, it may be in your left hand. What strikes me as genuinely thrilling is not that we exist despite this violent history, but that we exist because of it. The specific violence of those early stellar deaths was necessary. Without hypernovae, there are no heavy elements. Without heavy elements, there is no rocky planet. Without a rocky planet, there is no biochemistry, no water cycle, no nervous system capable of building a radio telescope and pointing it at the sky and asking what is out there. The survivors around their campfire built something new, that is real and that matters. But the deeper understanding, the honest understanding, is that the campfire and the survivors and the capacity to build anything at all of it came from the shattered ruins of something far older and far more violent than the survivors ever imagined. And learning that, really learning it in the full physical sense, not just as a sentence but as a felt understanding of what the chemistry and the astrophysics and the gravitational mathematics are actually saying, that is not a diminishment of human experience. That is what it feels like when science actually works. When the numbers stop being abstract and start being about the iron in your blood and the ghosts of dead stars wandering through the dark at the edge of the galaxy, you are not further from the truth. You are, for perhaps the first time, genuinely close to it.